Story 1. I had forgotten about this story until today, so I was very excited to finally have a story involving an entitled parent. To start the story, let me lay down some context. At this time in my life, I was 15 years old and living in a shared house, supported by government assistance. My mother was also receiving government benefits, but she decided to take her boyfriend, myself, and my 11-year-old brother, who normally lived with his dad, to the cinema. Knowing that my mother only had about $200 a week to live on, and even less when factoring in her substance use, I offered to pay for my brother, so that she would only need to pay for herself and her boyfriend. She seemed pretty happy with that, and we chatted comfortably while waiting in line for the tickets. When we reached the ticket booth, my mom told the attendant, 4 tickets to whatever movie is showing, with 2 buckets of popcorn and 4 large colas. I'm going to pay for my brother, remember? I asked. Yes, you can pay now, my mom replied. I thought she might have misunderstood me earlier when I said I was only paying for my brother and myself, so I reminded her again. No, Mom, I'm going to pay for Jamie and me and our food, and you can pay for yourself and your boyfriend. My mother's face began turning red and tightening up, as if she had expected me to pay for everyone, even though I had clearly said I was covering just my brother and myself while we were in the car on the way there. Then she began yelling at me, her face growing even redder as she spoke. Well, you get more money than I do anyway. You're my child, and you should be grateful that I looked after you. She didn't, by the way. I lived with her for 3 years, from age 12 to 15, and she didn't do much in the way of parenting. Now you've ruined the whole day, she continued. And we're going to be late for the movie. I tried to de-escalate the situation and said, please, just buy 2 tickets, and I'll buy the other 2 and all the food. Can we at least do that? Of course not. It's already in the system, just pay the amount so we can go in. At the time, I was still young and uncomfortable with conflict, so I gave in and paid for the tickets. When we got into the cinema, I discovered that the movie was in a different language and had subtitles. This meant I had to quietly read every subtitle aloud for my 12-year-old brother, who was dyslexic, without disturbing the entire cinema. Meanwhile, my mother kept whispering at me to speak more quietly, complaining that the movie wasn't even worth the money I had paid, and accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish. If I tried to shush her, no matter how gently, she would raise her voice even more and scoff at how rude I supposedly was. Anyway, I've recently started re-establishing contact after about 5 years of on and off no contact, and that's my story. Story 2. Sometimes I have hope that we can all get along, and then someone comes in and ruins it. Yesterday, my boyfriend and I went to the grocery store to check out a sweet deal on lobster tails. There was a lady with a dog, which we assumed was a service dog, and since I have a mild dog allergy, we went to get some drinks first. When we came back, the lady was ordering her meats when a darker-skinned man walked through. Her little demon dog started pulling at his leash and barking at the man. He looked like he wanted to kick the dog because it was trying to nip at his heel. The lady went into Karen mode and pulled her dog into her arms. What a smart dog. You're such a smart boy. We were all stunned for a second. My boyfriend pulled me a little closer because, well, I'm Mexican, and this white lady just praised her dog for barking and trying to attack a fellow people of color. The man snapped back that she was a witch. I agreed, and the lady proceeded to call him names, telling him he's a gangster. He was wearing a bandana as a mask, so obviously =gangster. The screaming lasted for a good minute as the man walked away with who I assume were his teenage daughters. The deli lady was trying her best to get her meats packed so she could leave, but Karen then started snapping at her about how she was doing everything wrong. She kept praising her dog and turned to my boyfriend, who's white, saying, "Dogs just can sense the bad in those people." I was trying to figure out if it would be more effective to ask if non-service animals were allowed in the store or fake a really intense allergic reaction when my boyfriend pulled me away to go check out. Some employees were already rushing to the scene as we walked away, and we ran into the man at checkout. We asked how he was doing, and he said, "Some people, man." Which was nice because my boyfriend is white, and I was afraid he'd snap at him or feel like my boyfriend was taunting him. In the end, we left with no lobster tails, and I didn't get to claim her dog tried to kill me with just existing. But it did help me make a plan should I ever run into a similar situation. Or if I ever run into her, I plan on loudly exclaiming, "Look, it's the Karen with the racist dog." Karens are easy to remember. Story 3. Hello everyone again. This is a follow-up after the other one I did on my evil dad, stepmom, and brother. So this one starts in 2019 when I'm in high school down my normal school stuff. So is my sister, who is 2 years below me. So it starts as a normal day, showing up to school as normal. I went to my first class, but when I got there the vice principal was there and walked up to me and asked me where my sister was and was she here today. As I thought she must have gotten another award or something, so I told him she was at the library, the last I saw her, and then he walked off. Later that day, I was called up to the offices, which was very rare for me, so I made my way up there. When I got there, I was surprised that my par was up there too. Then the vice principal, the principal, and the student counselor were there too. At that moment, I started to get a bad feeling that I got in trouble again, and started thinking, who did I hurt this time? But as we got in and sat down, they started asking questions about my sister, about what she does in her free time at school, to where she goes at these times, and asking how she acts with others, which I answered. Then the student counselor finally tells me that my sister had apparently assaulted a boy of her year, and had been for some time, and had been reported by the boy and his parents. I could not believe what I was hearing. After the meeting was finished, my sister was kicked out of school for a week, so I grabbed my stuff and headed to the par car, which my sister was in the back silent, not talking. That gave me a sign that something was not right, and once we got home she went to room and did not come out for the rest of the day. Par began to ask me questions on what was she doing at school. I told him I had no clue, so I went to my sister's room, opened the door slowly, and walked over to her bed, where she was face down in the pillows, so I sat down next to her and asked her to tell what happened, and told her I was not angry at her, and said, "I know you, sis, I know you would never do something like this. I beg you to tell me what happened." After 10 minutes, she finally started to open up and told me what happened. She told me that there was this boy that had been following her and harassing her, and had been telling her how she was beautiful and all that, and that he'd been doing this for some time, and that he had been getting more aggressive, and then started to tell the other boys and girls that they're dating, and that she was the one who wanted this. Then the student counselor found out, and now she got in trouble over what he said. At this point I was very pissed off, but I did not show her that I was angry at what this boy did to her. I just comforted her and calmed her down and told her it was not her fault. So for the whole week, I asked around school to see who this boy was. Sadly, no one wanted to tell me, so when my sister got back to school the very next week, I kept my eye on her. A week went by, and to nothing but one morning, I was walking to the back of the library to get to the block of classrooms. As I turned around the corner, I saw my sister walking down the path, and behind her was the entitled boy following her. I stepped back and heard my sister telling him to leave her alone, but the boy kept telling her that they were to be together and all that crap. To this day makes me sick. Then I heard my sister yell at him to stop grabbing her, then followed by her saying, "Let me go." He pulled her around the corner and walked right into me. He was a little surprised, but then I asked him what he was doing with her. He said that this was his girlfriend and that she would not leave him alone. He did not know that I was her brother. Then I told him to let her go. He said that he was going to take her up to the office, as she was apparently trying to force herself on him again, and asked if I did not know that she got kicked out of school for a week, which I responded with, "Yes, I did, as I was in the office with her." He asked why I was in the office with her, and if she did something to me too. "No, I was up there because she is my sister, you jerk." At this point, he realized who I was and turned around to go the other way to the office, still pulling my sister, so I grabbed him and pulled his hand off her, and he tried to hit me in response. Yeah, he hit me and gave me a black eye. In response to that, I grabbed him by his left shoulder and repeatedly punched him in the face. My sister stopped me from hurting him too bad, but I dragged him up to the office and into the principal office and made him tell the truth on what he'd done to my sister. But my sister came in saying she had recorded what happened and showed the principal after some time and some talking. The principal apologized to my sister about punishing her. As for the entitled boy, he got expelled for good and sadly for me. I got detention for the term, so I had no more free time, but the teacher who had me for detention was my woodwork teacher, and since we were friends, he let my friends see me and my sister would show up every lunch to talk to me to keep me company. But it's 2021 and all that is in the past, and no one ever tries to hurt or harass my sister, as they were scared of what I would do to them. Story 4. Okay, so my service dog of 5 years recently passed away due to cancer on the 3rd of this year, and I remembered this story. I'm 14, and this story took place when I was 13. So, I was in a GameStop at the mall that I went to weekly because I had ice skating classes and I had my service dog with me. She was a psychiatric service dog trained to avoid anxiety attacks that can lead to harm to myself and others, and to alert me to when I might pass out. She did not have a vest because it interfered with her work and my disability, and by ADA law, she doesn't need one in that case. But she did have a leash that read, "Anxiety Service Dog. Do not pet." And I was looking around and I also just wanted to pop in and say hi to an employee. The GameStop lady who I was pretty chill with, I was looking at a game for my Switch, I think Minecraft, and my dog was behind me for a task. Basically to make more space for me to avoid an episode, since people being down my neck is a huge trigger for me. And I hear this lady, "Aw, cute puppy." And she picks up my working service dog. "Oh, can you please not pick her up? She's working and has to stay focused." I was cut off by Karen, who is still holding my dog. "It doesn't have a vest, it's fine." Excuse me. By law, she doesn't need one if it inter. I was cut off again, but this time I could feel like I was about to have a really bad episode. I felt like I was going to faint as my dog struggled to get to me and out of Karen's grasp. Then the employee friend came to my rescue. "Ma'am, please let go of DD. She's a working dog, and what you're doing is illegal by distracting a working service dog." "No, this is my daughter's therapy dog." "Who's her daughter?" "I don't know. She was there alone. No kids." Next thing I know, I was falling down and it went black for me, and this next part was told by the employee. She said that after I went out, Karen dropped my dog on her face. My dog was small, a Chihuahua and Dachshund mix, and Karen around 6 foot to 6'3". They said my dog just got up and rushed over to me and started tasking by licking my face and laying on my stomach to try to wake me up. But I didn't wake up for a while because it turns out I hit my head on a glass display case and they called 911 because I wasn't getting up. I woke up to mall security and cops around me as one cop was cuffing Karen. Later I found out that she was getting arrested for assault, animal credulity, attempted robbery, distracting a service dog, or something like that, and attempted murder. Me and my dog ended up being okay. I don't know very much on the legal stuff. I just didn't even want to bother with it. We just didn't have the time or money to really do anything about it. Please don't distract working service dogs. The handler of that dog is depending on that dog to do its job to keep them safe and or alive. When you distract a service dog, it cannot do its job and is putting both the dog and handler at risk of injury or death. Please note that these aren't just dogs. They are medical equipment and are here not for your entertainment. They are here to do their jobs. And be very cute and very good puppers while doing it. Story 5. I had a friend I supported through everything. She vented constantly about her boyfriend, and then her ex-boyfriend when they broke up. I was always there, even when I was emotionally drained. I listened to her every day and gave her so much of myself, even when she would only talk about the same thing over and over again. But when I tried to talk, she would barely look up. She would just say, "MHM," clearly never paying attention. I was always there for her, but she was never there for me. One day, she went on a date she arranged through an online dating platform, and asked me to come with her to a cafe so she would feel safe. I told her clearly that I could only stay for 20 to 30 minutes because I had a trip the next morning. She said that was fine. I left when I said I would. She then ended up drinking with him and later went back to his house. Afterward, she told me that the guy had harmed her and said it was my fault. She blamed me for leaving the cafe and claimed it was my responsibility that she had gotten hurt. There was a bus stop right outside the cafe, and she had also been telling me how she hoped he had a car so they could go for a drive. So, how was she blaming me for leaving? She said I should have seen that he was pretending to be someone else when he wasn't at all. She was just upset he was shorter than 6 feet. Not long after, I went on my trip. Something happened to me that I still do not fully understand. I blacked out after drinking and woke up feeling sore and terrified with no memory of what had occurred. I was completely dissociated. When I told her, she said it was karma, that I deserved it for not staying with her at the cafe. She also constantly blamed me for her emotional state. She told me I reminded her of her trauma whenever I talked about a guy I was dating, even though she would frequently talk about her ex or other men she had met through dating platforms. She said she harmed herself whenever I talked about my dating life. I've only ever dated one person, so I'm still very new to dating. She accused me of making everything about myself, when in reality, I barely shared anything. I was always carrying her pain while mine was ignored. When I started seeing someone and got physically close to him, she called me unpleasant names and said I was participating in hookup culture. But just weeks later, she went on a trip, kissed 6 random guys, and got into a stranger's car in the middle of the night. I never judged her for any of that, yet she judged me for being with someone I genuinely cared about. She also used me financially. When her phone was stolen during one of our trips, I paid for everything: food, transportation, and basic needs. I was already dealing with credit card debt and still helped her. She never thanked me. She owes me hundreds but never paid me back or even brought it up again. The worst part is that I had planned to go on that trip solo, but she joined me last minute. She would also constantly ask to borrow my things: cleaning products, laundry pods, hair shampoo, just so she wouldn't have to buy them herself. She still refuses to return several of my belongings, including a glass container, perfume, earrings, necklace, and of course, the money she owes me. She would always bring me down, whether it was about my physical appearance or my academic accomplishments. Anytime I received a compliment, she would make it seem like people were just being polite. She would subtly judge and bring me and others down. Eventually, she blocked me. Then, she told people at school that I was not a good friend. But I know she only shared her version of the story. She always made herself out to be the victim in every situation. The only reason I put up with so much was because I knew she was going through a lot. But so was I, and I would never have treated someone the way she treated me. I know no one deserves what happened to her, but I also know I didn't deserve to be blamed for it. I didn't deserve to be made to feel like my own pain was somehow deserved. I just feel confused and used. I keep wondering if I did something wrong, but I also know deep down that I was a good friend. I just want to understand why she treated me like that. Story 6. I got my job at Radio Shack in 2015, only a few weeks after it was announced that the company was going out of business. That was fine by me. My resume was weak, and this job made it look a lot better. This is Los Angeles. This particular area is actually a pretty decent part of the city, except for this specific plaza. Outside of the plaza, the area is good. This plaza, however, was a different story. It was like an independent republic with a functioning economy in the center of the land. But at the same time, its own citizens were experiencing a collective psychological unwellness that they were not recovering from. The government didn't seem particularly interested in addressing it either. So, the average day was full of unruly individuals, rude behavior, petty crimes, and no shortage of entitlement and, of course, the occasional eccentric celebrity. Needless to say, I have many stories to share. Let's start with this one. I think I was only 2 weeks into the job at this point when a man came in with a bag of coins. The manager turned to me and quickly explained that this man always came in to pay his monthly phone bill with the prepaid mobile service provider. He then asked me to assist him today before walking away. I later realized this was an impromptu training opportunity. He used this experience to prepare me for what, at the time, we perceived as the worst it could get at the store, at least in terms of dealing with legitimate customers. Ironically, we were proven wrong months later, but that's another story for another time. The manager didn't actually leave. He sat down at the phone repair table to observe and ensure I didn't have a breakdown. Apparently, one trainee had done just that when dealing with this man. I completely understand why. But the hard lesson here was that engaging with this man's bizarre behavior would only prolong the interaction. Poor soul. So here he is, flat cap, sunglasses, dirty plaid sweater, and a $30 prepaid mobile phone in hand. This man somehow looked both homeless and like he meant business, and he sure did act like both. You could argue that a man experiencing homelessness and mental illness might not be suitable for a humorous retelling, and I would tend to agree. Living in Los Angeles, I've encountered many people in such situations, smart, kind, even talented individuals enduring deeply unfair circumstances. I have fond memories of some of the people who lived along Venice Beach, including one I considered a close friend who passed away in 2012. But the ones who frequented this particular plaza were unique exceptions. Sure enough, he was here to pay his $35 monthly phone bill, and he brought a plastic bag full of coins to do so. Wonderful. I asked for quarters first. He responded by grabbing a handful of random coins, not quarters, and dropping them on the counter. There weren't enough quarters to cover the amount, but he assured me he had more. He just wasn't bringing them out yet, because now it was time to talk. And by talk, I mean furiously ramble at length about things he was obviously fabricating. Topics included his direct communication with a higher power, how he was that higher power's servant doing important work, how he only supported the public and never did anything for himself, and how much he'd done for the city and even the world. He claimed to have extensive social and political influence. If I wasn't giving him my full attention while simultaneously sorting through coins, he would stretch out his arm, wave his hand in front of my face, and shout, "Hello?" So I had to actively listen to everything he was saying. When he made an outrageous claim, like having direct conversations with a divine figure, I had to respond with, "Oh, or else I'd get more hand-waving." Not that it helped. No matter what I said, he would immediately follow up with, "You don't believe me." He said this as an accusation, and would then continue with even more details about how truthful and important he was. Occasionally, he would turn to nearby customers and begin ranting at them. If they didn't respond, he'd do the same hand-waving and shout, "Hello?" So, yes, the cashiers weren't his only audience. This man was a challenge for anyone who crossed his path. At one point, he noticed an African-American man in the store and launched into a loud and awkward speech about how great he believed African-American people were. As though their ethnicity was some fascinating topic, he absolutely had to talk about loudly and publicly. The discomfort in the room was overwhelming. Oh, and let's not forget the saliva. Every word out of his mouth came with a bit of spit. It ended up on the coins, the counter, and unfortunately, on my hands and arms. It was everywhere. I actually went back into my Facebook Messenger to find the story I wrote to a friend the day this happened, and I had nicknamed him Spitty. That nickname stuck. I had to keep interrupting to ask him to find more quarters. How incredibly rude of me. Of course, he had more quarters. He had a whole bag of coins. So, he would reach in and pull out a fistful of every type of coin and drop it on the counter again. Then it was right back to his monologue. The higher power, the public, how great of a person he is. At one point, my manager decided to playfully interrupt the scene. He called out to tell me he liked the song I was playing on the Bluetooth speakers and asked who the artist was. I would later learn that when my manager helped this man, he did everything possible to ignore his behavior, though he still allowed him to pay his bill because business is business. I have no idea how he managed to ignore the aggressive hand flailing, but as a trainee, I couldn't pull that off. But my manager had asked me a question, so I answered, and that arm extended, the wrist began to flail, and the shout came from across the store. "Hello?" Eventually, I managed to collect 140 quarters, 35 stacks of 4, after repeatedly requesting more handfuls of coins to be dumped across our saliva-covered counter. It was finally time to pay the phone bill. Now I needed his phone number. Apparently, that was a ridiculous thing to ask. Didn't I know he comes in here every month? He's a regular. This was the scolding I got for asking for his number, which meant he reacted like this every single month. But I was new. Surely, he hadn't seen me before, right? And that somehow clicked with him. He gave me the number. Success. The bill was paid, the coins collected, and he could take his bag of change back. But of course, instead of leaving, he took more time to ramble about influence, purpose, and self-importance. I had to be the one to sweep all his coins into a pile and insist that he scoop them back into his bag, so I could head to the back of the store for my lunch break. In hindsight, I should have just walked away. I should not have touched those coins, but I did because it was 2015, and we hadn't yet experienced a pandemic that would make everyone think twice about germs. I went to the back of the store, and my manager followed me to ask if I was all right. That's when my brain pieced it all together. He had set me up. He asked me to help Spitty, then sat and watched the whole thing. It was a test, and I passed. A plus. I was going to be a great employee. Hooray. 2 weeks later, Spitty came back into the store and walked up to me and my coworker, shouting that he couldn't make phone calls. He claimed that we were the ones who had turned off his service and declared that he was going to sue the entire company. He told us we should be worried because he was planning to buy the entire store, the building, and the whole plaza. He said he could turn all of us into millionaires because he himself was going to become a millionaire. We just stood there with blank expressions until he left. And then I didn't see him again for months. After those first 2 visits, I genuinely started to wonder if something had happened to him. 3 months passed. I was dealing with another challenging customer, an entirely different kind of difficult. She asked far too many questions, took up way too much of my time, and then returned on the 14th day of her 14-day return window to bring everything back. Store policy required me to check the contents of each returned package to ensure everything was still there. She had decided to separate every item from its packaging and toss all of it into one big plastic bag. It was all mixed together, forcing me to dig through it and figure out what belonged where. Despite my best efforts, I ended up making a mistake. She left with the box for an expensive pair of headphones. By the time I realized it, she was long gone. I was too frazzled by the whole encounter to think clearly. Fun detail, she had opened a package of earbuds by cutting diagonally through the entire thing with scissors, destroying the earbuds. She then asked if they were still returnable. At this point, I was already stressed and internally panicking. I thought I might get in trouble with the company over a cardboard box. And to add to that, I had been skipping my medication. At the time, I believed I didn't really need it anymore. In hindsight, that was a terrible decision. I've done this twice now in the 7 years since receiving the prescription, and both times I had to learn the hard way. My mania had already been triggered, and it was too late. Then, as if perfectly timed to push me over the edge, Spitty walked in. But this time, something was different. He seemed collected, quiet, calm. He was walking slowly. My coworker and I actually didn't believe it was him at first because he wasn't yelling. But it was him. I started the conversation by noting that I hadn't seen him in months. He told me he had been hit by a car and had been hospitalized ever since. And now he was back to pay his phone bill again so he could start making calls. As my body and mind kicked into overdrive, I had a sudden realization. Spitty has a phone. That means he dials phone numbers and people dial his number. Which means there are people out there who willingly endure his long-winded rambling over the phone. Apparently, this happens often enough that he scrapes together money each month to keep the service going. But that wasn't my focus. What mattered was that he handed me green paper cash. Thank goodness, 2 $20 bills. I entered his phone number, pulled a $5 bill from the register, and handed it to him with a sense of relief. The transaction was declined. Of course, it couldn't be that easy. I told Spitty that the payment didn't go through. He looked at me for a moment, then said, $5 change, buddy, come on. I had to explain in full detail that his phone bill had not been paid, his service was not reactivated, and that despite the cash exchange, I had to return the $5 and give him his $40 back while I figured out the issue. The story is already long, so I'll summarize. I called the customer service department for his mobile service provider and learned that you can only go 3 months without paying a prepaid bill before you lose your phone number entirely, and oddly enough, that also meant he lost service to the phone itself. This seemed strange and discouraged me from ever relying on prepaid services, but that was their policy at the time. I explained to Spitty that he would need to purchase a new phone. To my surprise, he wasn't upset. He wasn't spitting, wasn't yelling, he was listening. He wasn't thrilled, but he accepted what I told him and asked for the cheapest phone available with his provider. I grabbed a $20 flip phone from the wall, and he purchased it. We activated it with a new number, confirmed the service worked, and I handed him the phone and packaging in a plastic bag. He thanked me profusely for everything I had done. He was polite. He was grateful. He wished blessings upon me, and then he left. After an hour of chaos, it was finally safe for me to have a meltdown. My coworker told me to go to the back and take a well-earned break. He had been around during the headphone return, and while I was helping Spitty, he assisted when we needed to explain the situation to Spitty but otherwise stayed out of it, which I completely understood. From him, I learned valuable lessons about company loyalty, namely, how Radio Shack didn't exactly deserve much of it. That insight made my time at the store much easier. I went to the back of the store and let myself cry. I finally accepted that skipping my medication had been a very poor decision. I stuck to the prescription consistently for the next 4 years until I made the same mistake again. We spent the rest of that day watching sketch comedy on the store's tablet through the Bluetooth speaker. According to a message I had written to a friend back then, more customers came in later that day, and I apparently did great. During manic episodes, I tend to perform exceptionally well as long as the environment remains positive. There was even another difficult customer that day whom I had completely forgotten about. According to my past self, she told me I was the best employee she had ever seen at the store and called my coworker a useless jerk. The next time I saw Spitty, he had someone with him, a social worker, probably. I imagined that while he was in the hospital, someone finally realized that he needed regular support and medication. Every month after that, he returned with a different social worker. He paid his bill, was polite, said kind things, and left. No more shouting. No more spit. Spitty stopped spitting. It's strangely poetic that getting hit by a car may have actually saved his life. Oh, and that headphone woman. She came back 2 weeks later, handed me the missing box, and left. My manager had been cool about the return mistake, and now that I had the box, that whole problem was finally resolved.